over there and have a contract, and we'll get it to you cheaper than your $15 copay. And it'll tell you, plug in your drugs, what's the price, where am I going to get it, and click send. That's it. You can get online and set up an account right now. Very cool thing. What if this is integrated into my EMR now? You know, I got a hypertensive patient and I want to prescribe one of 3 medications. They have a pharmacy plan I don't understand, but I don't need to understand it. If you integrate this into my EMR, I pull up the drug, I'm ready to click send to the pharmacy. It tells me what the cost is for the patient out of pocket and what the alternatives are and what those cost. Wouldn't that be nice? Eminently doable. How many people have that capability in their system right now? Very few. Why? There's no good reason why, right? That's eminently doable. I've played with this, by the way. Actually, most of the time, it is cheaper. It's actually very good. I've started advertising this to patients. These guys, we're entering into a partnership with these guys and a company called MedFusion, which is a patient portal integration platform, essentially identical to what Apple's doing. And they're going to white label a product for us on our assistant's website that allows people to click on our homepage and do all of the above. Integrate their patient portals. They have portals of multiple systems, single platform, push real time, every day, continually updated, and pharmacy discounts support through Blink. It's kind of fun. You guys are familiar with Cardioband, right? So this is a live course play in your Apple Watch. It's, you know, Ro mentioned this. It's a single lead ECG tracing. Really cool clinical applications and lots of fun pilots and projects going on about how do you use this and what's the value proposition in the real world for something that's wearable, right? How much does the live course cost? Like $75?
$199 band.
For the band, it's $199, and I think the thumb thing is like $75 or something, right?
Yeah, $89.99.
Yeah.
But they charge the physician to download the data. If it has to be sent to a physician, they charge $9.99 per physician, per member, per month.
So we're working on a project to work around that. They do,
Yeah.
and that's a problem.
Yeah.
But there are probably ways around that too.
Right.
And then here's Apple. You guys probably have heard about this. So they have they've partnered with really strategic health systems, so did Marquee Health Systems, and integrated with an API to essentially pull the data and have it available not only to the patient, but to themselves, right? If the patient consents to share their data. So really useful if you're in the business of making money off people's data. And MedFusion does the same thing. What's great about this particular thing is that it kind of gets around some of the HIPAA concerns. So patients put in their own logins, any patient portal they have. They're seeing 3 systems. They log in once to each of those 3 systems, and then it pushes, and I can push it to whoever I want, right? Any of my providers, my medication list is always updated. Some of these apps even have clinic scheduling capability, things like that. Really useful. All right. Anybody know what blockchain is? Before I put up the definition. Does anybody? So, can I put you on the spot? Because I think it's virtually impossible to give a 1 or 2 sentence explanation of blockchain. It cannot be done. But if anybody can do it, Dr. Lee can do it.
Yeah, definitely no way to put it into one word or even a sentence, to be honest with you. But so imagine a network of computers that contain data only accessible by a unique key. Right? And so if you have that key, you have access to that data. You can transfer that data between nodes within this network. And the ledger that exists with this would actually contain that transaction on both computers. Right? So then as you increase the number of transactions that occur, the validity of the transactions are assured. So basically it makes it unhackable. But you'd have to hack every computer that contained that one nugget of data. So that's one of the things that I think is intriguing about the application.
So the potential value of some technology like that is that you've got enhanced security. You have duplicated ledger updated in real time to anybody who's contracted to share that data. So what applications could you imagine, throwing that at in the healthcare space? How would that be useful to you or to your patient? and you've got $80 million to invest. Would you invest in blockchain, and if so, how?
Well, it solves the problem in general for encryption of PHI.
Personal health information.
I mean,
Yeah.
it would be an enormous storage problem, but it could do all of it.
Good.
Sure.
Agree.
I don't know if you saw this, but actually Sierra Leone actually used it for their elections.
Sierra, I didn't see that.
It was actually the first nation to use blockchain to effectively solidify and,
That's a great application for
Yeah.
blockchain technology.
On the
Can't,
bill-
there's no election fraud with that.
On the bill, on the most straightforward though is billing and coding
Yeah.
and adjudicating claims and all
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Revenue cycle piece is huge. Revenue cycle piece is absolutely huge. All right, good. So just briefly, and you guys can read all this, it's a digitally recorded distributed ledger. It's exactly like Dr. Maynard described. You have this peer-to-peer network comprised of nodes, and the idea here is that it can't be tampered with. And the way people interact within this network is via what's called a smart contract. So you agree on a set of terms that describe how the data is going to be shared and used, and that's your smart contract essentially. Okay, and there may be a financial component to that, but essentially that's your contract. And it can be as big a network or a small network as you want. The transactions are secured by a cryptographic digital signature that authenticates the data change. So if you buy something online with your credit card, it's not an immediate exchange of funds, right? It's a third-party mediated delayed transaction. This is different. This is an immediate transaction, stamped and secured and digitally printed on both sides of the transaction, happens in real time with no third-party intermediary. Does that make sense? So this is from our white paper that we wrote. So one of my med students actually drew this for me. We're trying to publish this paper now. I thought it was really cool. She tried to make it real pictures, and actually I thought the little graphic was so cool. We're going to use it just like this. So you guys can look at this in the slides, but this is the general idea in the healthcare space. And people are nervous about this, but I think it's pretty promising. So exactly like Rex said, I think there's a ton of potential value in the personal health information storage and exchange space. And for the very reasons that we touched on, right? It's a very inefficient process. You don't have real-time data. You're faxing things back and forth. Imagine how much administrative time you can save if things are reconciled in real time with anybody who's on the network. Discharge data, medication reconciliation. What about financial transactions in healthcare, right? What about revenue cycle management? So this is really interesting. So payers, providers, and financial institutions can share information through the same private distributed ledgers, reduce claims denials, secure patient payments, right? What if I could give you your explanation of benefits at the time of discharge as a patient and set up a payment plan because I've already reconciled the claim? That's pretty useful.
How about if you could give it to them before?
You could for elective stuff.
Yeah.
Yep, you sure could. So turns out it's happening. Humana, Optum, some others just created this partnership, and they're doing this, and they're sharing provider data, provider demographics, right? Which is kind of useful. Again, real-time reconciliation across multiple copies of the ledger. They think this is going to save them a ton of administrative costs. They're probably right. So this is a company called Behavior. It's a virtual reality company. Yeah.
Just being a second, I'm just curious as to what your opinion is here, but how do you differentiate, or how do you know that it's not the same license effect, right? I mean, basically the way you described it, with the utilization of blockchain and trying to put that into the healthcare space sounds absolutely amazing. But we also said that license sounds absolutely amazing too, and $4 billion later, it
Yeah.
didn't count.
I mean, I think you're right to be skeptical. I think they have to develop the proof points. They have to put you have to prove it. And I think it's in that process. We're early in that process. Look at Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's based on blockchain technology, essentially, right? And look at the price of that thing. For exactly that reason, right? My personal opinion on Bitcoin is that it is the MySpace of blockchain, financial companies, right? It's going to come and go. Something really big is going to follow on that resonates with the broader public and people buy into. I don't want the Facebook of blockchain financial.
Bitcoin didn't fail because of, it's always had security issues, and that's what caused it to fluctuate so much. But that recent decline was more about a competitor than it was about anything wrong with Bitcoin.
How much do you think the value fluctuated for reasons that weren't financial? In other words, how much do you think speculation and press and hype had to do with the price point of Bitcoin over the last?
I think that's what the normal resonance in Bitcoin's price is probably a lot of that, and it can go pretty wide swings. But that most recent plummet was because of a significant competitor. Nobody knows who's going to win in the space.
Yeah.
And it's going to be all about efficiency of transactions and all of that. So.
Yeah. And I think it's the kind of thing that gets more valuable than scales, right? So when you get something that's broadly adopted, it's going to be really useful.
Brad, I'm going to challenge you. So we talked a lot about costs. We've talked a lot about disruptive technologies. There are two pieces we haven't talked about, right? Prices and patience, right? So in this paradigm, what we've done is we've managed costs at a hospital level, we've maintained margin. But in terms of real time, what do you think is going to happen in the future in terms of managing prices for patients, right? Obviously, we all think transparency is going to help. We're going to get to a more competitive market, but the reality is healthcare is a regulated industry. There'll still be components that will centralize healthcare. Do you think there's any sort of decentralizing force that we're going to see? I know you and I have talked about this. I won't bias you on my thinking, but I think what you're alluding to in blockchain has the capacity to do that.
So I think you're right, and I'm going to try to give you a short answer. I took my price transparency slides out for the sake of time. I think I just wrote a paper on price transparency too. I think it's a very important thing. The lack of symmetry of information in healthcare makes it unique from other areas of commerce. And that is to say that you can't get the data you would need as a patient to effectively shop around. It doesn't exist in a readily accessible form. Now, one of the things that CMS is doing with this interoperability mandate is they're going to say you have to show your prices online, and they have to be easily accessible. Now, what they mean is, what are we charging you? It's not real cost, but it's a start. And it's only a piece of the puzzle, right? When you couple that with real clinical outcomes, real quality data, which is also hard to come by, and you do it in a way that's digestible for an average human being, then you can start to shop around. Because we have such a sort of schizophrenic system with different kinds of payers, and it's incredibly siloed, and there isn't that transparency, it's very hard to shop competitively. So I think what's going to happen is, as you see high deductible plans, like there's a real substantial portion of the population that has a $5,000 and above deductible, there's an opportunity for real market-based competition. And that's where you're going to see companies get their foot in the door. I think that's going to be a real interesting opportunity, and I've got some sort of payer slides here coming up there. They'll speak that a little bit, but I think the folks who don't want, who are potentially on the hook for a huge out-of-pocket expense with that copay are going to demand, and there will be somebody who will put it together in a compelling way, a better way to shop for healthcare and real competition. There's going to be a real market for that. What happens depending on legislation with the individual insurance market is going to be interesting too. There's another opportunity for real competition. If I'm, the federal government's back and forth about this individual mandate stuff, but assuming there's a real offer from healthcare insurers for individual healthcare, that's an opportunity as well. All right, real quick, I'll wrap it up here. This is a cool company based in Louisville, run by a friend of mine. It's called Behavior, capital V, capital R for the virtual reality. They're trying to use virtual reality to do behavior modification. Some really interesting data around post-traumatic stress disorder in this space, anxiety, depression, very cool potential applications to opioid addiction. We're doing a pilot study in our system with smoking cessation. And it's a really neat experience. It's not just your, it's more immersive therapy. And it seems to resonate with patients in a way that's above and beyond, just watching something on a screen. So we'll see how that plays out. As I alluded to, the national health policy sort of landscape is a moving target. I think insurers are faced with tough decisions to do just what we talked about, which is decide what to do in terms of benefits and structure and individual market. And what we see is that health insurance companies aren't really able to do business the way they used to. And so they branded this as innovative, and we're interested in social determinants of health, we're interested in all these sorts of things, but it's really them diversifying and trying to maintain sort of a viable business and expand in really strategic and interesting ways. And it's been kind of fun to watch develop. All kinds of really interesting partnerships are developing with huge retail groups, pharmacies, IT companies, insurers. You see these headlines now more and more every day, right? So this was a $4 billion acquisition, happened to be in my backyard. So Kindred now acquired by Humana, and talks that Walmart might acquire Humana, right? So this is crazy, right? But this is what they're doing. So they're pressured, and what they're doing in response is they're diversifying their portfolio. It's pretty neat. United, did you guys know that United has 30,000 doctors that work for them? It's an insurance company, 30,000 physicians around the country right now, and an appetite to get more. They want to buy Vita, CVS, and Aetna. Turns out, there was concerns that this deal wouldn't go through. Turns out the Department of Justice announced yesterday is probably not going to challenge this as an antitrust concern. And so this is a $69 billion deal that may well go through. Stocks for both companies are through the roof right now. And you guys, of course, have heard about this company to be named, what do you think they're going to do? So if you're him, how do you leverage this kind of experience and wealth to change healthcare? What would you do? Limitless resources, unlimited resources. A distribution chain that's better than any created in the history of the world, and entirely connected to almost every human being, in the country. Now, they said they were going to start with their employees, but they've already now started to announce these other interesting things. There's no way they're going to make this to their employees. They're going to practice on their employees, and they're going to understand the business model, and they're going to scale to the rest of the country. What would you do if you're fooled one day?
What would you do?
I would capitalize on Amazon's distribution model, and I would make the pharmacy, the standalone pharmacy, go the way of the Blockbuster. It'd be like the last standalone pharmacist in, where was the last Blockbuster?
Bend, Oregon.
Bend, Oregon, right? This is Netflix. This is Netflix. Netflix, remember how Netflix started? They would mail you a DVD, you would keep it, watch it, and then you would mail it back. You guys, nobody remembers that? That was Netflix.
You got jailed.
Right? That's not what Netflix does. Do you even have a DVD player? I mean,
What
was a piracy.
Here. So I feel good, I log in.
Yeah.
I talked to a doctor, Amazon Prime, I had my medicine 3 hours later.
yeah, so people are definitely interested in that, and I think it has a role if it's really tightly sort of regulated. There was a big headline I saw the other day. It's in New York. Somebody felt bad, walked into I don't remember that much of the details, on a CVS and got on a telehealth call with an ER doc from Cornell or something, and turns out the guy was hypertensive.